Welcome back. This is now part two of the tutorial on using the Writing the Ox web application. And I'm back at the beginning again. Let me make this full screen so that things appear properly. And as I explained in the first part of this tutorial, whenever you first start up this web application, it is configured to by default display over here. This is just the Chinese title of Master Wei Song's Song of Dharma Nature. And we're not going to look at this. In the first part of the tutorial, we were looking at the four great vows. And now I'm going to instead make another choice from the selection in the menu up at the top of the application. I'm going to go and press on the button that says Heart, and you might be able to guess what that is. That's the Heart Sutra. And so here, this top row is the title of the Heart Sutra, which, if you hover over the title, it gives you the both the transliteration, the way that people who learned this from a Korean teacher, or for someone who has studied under a Korean teacher, you learn to pronounce this as Ma Ha Ban Ya Ba Ra Mil Ta Shim Gyong. Mahabanya Baramilta Shim Gyong, which, if you translate that into English, the Mahaprajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra, the Heart Sutra for short. And so this display of all the characters in the Heart Sutra breaks it up into 28 lines, which kind of corresponds to if you've ever chanted the Heart Sutra with a group that is associated with Zen Master Sung San and his Dharma family, which I'm a part. Zen Master Sung San was a Korean Zen master who came to the West back in the, I don't know, 80s, maybe even late 70s, was it? And so his students and those who have studied with those who studied under him, or however many generations there are now of teachers and students in his lineage, learned they learned this as the Korean Heart Sutra, when actually it's in Chinese. The so-called Korean Heart Sutra, or some people who have studied in Japanese traditions might think of it as the Japanese Heart Sutra. It's all Chinese, and all different from people who have learned this in the Soto or Rinzai or some other Japanese Buddhist tradition. They're just pronouncing the characters differently, and these are the characters. There's one minor asterisk next to that statement, which is that for some reasons unknown to me, and I think to anybody, the Japanese inserted one set of, well, actually two characters that go together, the two characters that we pronounce in the Korean tradition, ilche. Anyway, but so they have two more characters somewhere in here. We already looked at the four vows. In this particular presentation, the four vows, there's also a bunch of extra characters down here that I've added because I think these are characters that are helpful for learning the components that are involved in making up the characters that are in the four vows. These characters down here are just made by taking the components of the characters up here. These characters, that is to say, up here, can be broken down into their component parts. Like if you take, let's take a good one like Mu. Mu has a bunch of components. These components can be rearranged in different ways. And among the ways in which the components can be rearranged are the characters that one finds down here. So for just to give a very simple example, the very first character in the four vows uh, has as one of its components Wei, which is the character for circle or surround. Um, the third character, Shi, which is one of the two characters that makes up the word for vow, uh, has a very similar looking character, but this is really not the same as Wei. This is Ko, or mouth. And if you take one of the distinguishing features of this character, Wei, is that you can put things inside of it. And so if you take the character for mouth and put it inside the character for circle, then you get this character down here. If you look down at the lower right corner of your screen that I'm indicating now, click on that character and you get the character for hui, which is a means to circle, to go back, to turn around, to answer, to return. It's just made by putting one character inside of another. Now, let me click on the components of hui again and just explain one thing that's happening over here on this part of the screen. So if you click on a component and the currently displayed text has characters that contain that component, then those will be highlighted. And so the character Wei actually shows up in lots of other characters. And click that back button again, go back to Hui. Now I'm going to click on, instead of clicking on the outer circle, click on the inner circle, which is the character for Ko. And it also shows up in quite a few characters in this text. Not as many in this case, but here they are. I'm indicating some of them with my mouse. Okay, so what are some of the other possibilities that you can explore in this web application? Well, I can list them. Sorry. These are the 10 ox-herding pictures. Of course, they're not the pictures. These are the little poems that are associated with the 10 ox-herding pictures. And so this is an interesting thing to explore. I'm actually still filling in some of the information that's needed on all the characters are there. So like, anyway, you can go and start clicking around on these characters just like we were doing with the 4 Great Vows or with the Heart Sutra. This is the label of this button up here is actually the Chinese for 10 ox picture. The next button over is just labeled as Vocab, which is vocabulary. This is kind of a bit of a hodgepodge. The top set of lines are different ways of paying homage to the 3 jewels, or taking refuge in the 3 jewels, or bowing down to the 3 jewels. Namu, this 2 character combination here, na mu, here. Na mu is the Chinese way of saying namaha or namo, which of course in Sanskrit means to bow down to something. The middle section, starting down here, is a collection of different sayings. And so here, this one here, the second one in this kind of lower middle section, I hover over it, it says, who after all is the one doing Nyanfo? Who after one is the one doing, or pronounce it as Nembutsu or Yambul. This here says, what comes through the gate is not the family treasure. And these are some names of great teachers. this right here, what does it say? It says, avoid all bad actions, cultivate all virtuous actions, purify the mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. So forth. Some good stuff, some interesting Buddhist teachings and little Zen sayings. This final section down here on this particular, on the vocab selection, this is the dialogue between Bodhidharma and Emperor Wu, ending, of course, with the famous Bodhidharma replied, I don't know, or don't know. This is Bodhidharma. Da, Bodhidharma, sometimes just referred to as Da, said, don't know, or not knowing. Anyway, the next button over, so we're going along. This is the homage to the three jewels. This is a great chant that Zen Master Sung San taught all of his students, and is just that. It's a wonderful practice of taking refuge in the three jewels in the form of a chant. This next selection is the Kanzeon chant, which is not a chant that Zen Master Sung San taught to his students, but which is today generally associated with Japanese Buddhism, but which is originally a Chinese chant. This is originally actually a very condensed summary of the 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. And it's a wonderful practice, regardless of what Buddhist tradition you happen to come from. If you are a fan of the Lotus Sutra, and who isn't, this is a great chant to know. The next selection is another chant that Zen Master Sung San taught. This is the Kwanseum Bosal chanting in Chinese characters. Right after that comes, you'll see that these two are almost exactly the same, but not quite. This is Jijang Bosal chanting, another chant that Zen Master Sung San, but this one is chanting to Jijang Bosal, also known in Sanskrit as Chitigarbha. And the next chant is, as the default, I think this is quite pretty, even though the characters are a little small in order to make them fit in here. But I very much like Master Wisong's Song of Dharma Nature. Zen Master Sung San, who's my teacher's teacher. My teacher is Zen Master Daigak of Furnace Mountain. His teacher was Zen Master Sung San. And in one of his last books, I don't think it was his last book, but in one of his last books, The Compass of Zen, Zen Master Sung San devotes a chapter to this particular poem, Master Wisong's Song of Dharma Nature. The next selection is, this is a chant to Maitreya Buddha. This is a chant that was composed by Xuanzang, who was the translator of the Heart Sutra. So when we chant the Heart Sutra, we were chanting Xuanzang's Heart Sutra. This is another chant. So the Heart Sutra, of course, is a sutra that is spoken by Avalokiteshvara. This is a chant that is directed to Maitreya, the Buddha to come. This selection is the next one over. Up here. These three characters up here in the title to this, or the label on this button, is 10 small mantras. This is a very widespread practice in modern Chinese Buddhism, goes back many centuries. These are, like the title says, these are 10 small mantras, and I've numbered them. After that comes the Sandokai. Unfortunately, this page still needs, this text still needs a lot of work. Some of this is kind of aspirational at this point. The next one over, titled Van Orden. So Van Orden is Brian Van Orden, who's a modern a scholar and teacher of classical Chinese. This is from a wonderful little book of his called, with the very improbable title of Classical Chinese for Everyone. Um, this is the texts that he used, which are all either from, I think they're all either from the Analects of Confucius or the Tao Te Ching. Next one is, again, this one is even less completely implemented. This is from the great books by Tuttle, the first 200 and the first 100 and the second 100 Chinese characters, yeah, which I've combined together to call them the first 200. And then this page, this is actually a fairly useful page. This shows some of the resources that I've used and that I encourage people to take a look at if you're interested in learning Chinese characters. These next three buttons are potentially very useful. They're not fully working, let's just say, but let's do this. Let's take this character here that's still being displayed, go to character search here. We can just, I just copied and pasted into this field here, this character, and yeah, so that doesn't really, let's say, take this and then click on something else. Might not be able to follow too closely what I'm doing here, but if I click on the, of course, this button doesn't work very well. Let's say I wanted to look at some pinyin. Let's say I wanted to look at, remember the, if you remember, or you might already know, that the letter 8 in Chinese is pronounced something like ba. Oh, that didn't work at all. Oh, no, yes, it did. Yeah. So I put in the pinyin for ba, and it gave down here a bunch of choices. You can do in the pinyin search function on this web application. You don't put in the diacritics. I can. I don't know if I actually implemented that you can put in the diacritics, but it will show all of the matches for any combination of or any use of diacritics. One of them is, in this case, ba. So now I can click on ba for 8, or this ba. There's several bas here. See, but one of them is for father. One of them is a huge snake. Now I truncate the definition here so that it'll fit into this field. The full definition of this ba is a huge snake that can swallow an elephant. Part of the definition. Interesting. The Chinese has a character just for a huge snake that can swallow an elephant. Well, okay, this has gone longer than I intended it to, and I'm rambling. So this two-part tutorial should give you a good start. And leave a comment or whatever, or a question for this video, and like that. Thanks for listening.